The ancient star charts had been wrong about many things, but they had been devastatingly accurate about one fact: Deathworlds produced the most dangerous species in the galaxy. Rex studied the blue marble floating in the void before him, its surface swirling with what his instruments identified as violent storm systems and unstable weather patterns. Perfect conditions for forging warriors. The Draknari fleet had traveled 3 months to reach this remote system, following energy signatures that suggested advanced technology. What they found exceeded their expectations. The third planet showed all the hallmarks of a true death world: massive predators roaming its surface, toxic atmospheric conditions in many regions, and geological instability that would have killed weaker species within generations. Rex's scales rippled with anticipation as he reviewed the sensor data. His species had conquered 47 systems, each victory adding new warrior races to the Deathworld Alliance. The coalition of feared races, as some called them, had become the most powerful military force in known space. Every member world contributed warriors hardened by their hostile home environments, creating an unstoppable army of survivors. The communication array crackled to life as his scanning officer announced the detection of artificial structures orbiting the system's gas giant. Rex's excitement grew. Not only had this death world produced intelligent life, but they had achieved spaceflight. Another technological species would strengthen the alliance considerably. "Hail them!" Rex commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never been refused. The standard greeting played across all frequencies, transmitted in the 17 most common galactic languages. Within minutes, a response came back in a dialect Rex didn't recognize. But his translation systems quickly adapted. The voice that answered was calm, almost musical in its cadence. "This is Dr. Maya Thompson of the Earth Research Vessel Horizon. We're conducting a survey of this system's outer planets." "How can we help you?" Rex blinked in confusion. The response was polite, curious, and completely lacking in the aggressive posturing he expected from Deathworld inhabitants. Perhaps this species had evolved differently, channeling their violence into more subtle forms. He decided to be direct. "I am Rex, War Commander of the Draknari Empire and Speaker for the Deathworld Alliance. Your planet has been selected for membership in our coalition. Prepare your strongest warriors for evaluation and integration into our forces." The silence that followed stretched longer than Rex had anticipated. When Maya finally responded, her tone remained maddeningly cheerful. "That's quite an honor, Commander Rex, but I'm afraid Earth isn't interested in joining any military alliances. We're more focused on scientific exploration and peaceful contact with other species." Rex's jaw dropped open, revealing rows of serrated teeth. No Deathworld species had ever refused alliance membership. It was unthinkable. The benefits were obvious: protection from weaker species, access to advanced military technology, and the right to claim territory through conquest. What kind of warriors would reject such opportunities? "Perhaps you don't understand," Rex said, his voice dropping to a threatening growl. "The Deathworld Alliance doesn't make requests. We make offers that cannot be refused. Your planet will contribute warriors to our cause or face the consequences of defying us." Maya's response came with what Rex could only interpret as amusement. "Commander, I think there might be some misunderstanding. Earth has a United Nations that handles diplomatic relations, but we don't really do the whole conquest thing anymore. We found it wasn't very sustainable." Rex felt his blood pressure rising. Sustainable? What did sustainability have to do with warfare? Strong species conquered weak ones, claimed their resources, and expanded their territory. That was the natural order of the galaxy. How had a Deathworld species survived without embracing this fundamental truth? "You speak of peace as if it were possible," Rex said, his confusion evident. "Your world produced you through constant struggle and violence. How can you claim to reject your nature?" "Oh, we had our violent phases," Maya replied conversationally. 2 world wars, numerous regional conflicts, some really spectacular failures in leadership. But we learn from those experiences. Turns out cooperation works better than conquest for long-term survival. Rex's tactical officer leaned over to whisper urgent information. The sensor readings were incredible. Earth's population exceeded 8 billion individuals, far larger than any Deathworld population on record. Their technology, while different from Alliance standards, showed remarkable innovation in fields the Alliance had never considered important: medicine, agriculture, environmental management. "Your numbers are impressive," Rex admitted. "But size means nothing without martial strength. The Alliance has crushed civilizations 10 times larger than yours." "I'm sure you have," Maya said, her tone remaining diplomatic. "But Earth really isn't interested in joining. We appreciate the offer, though. Is there anything else we can help you with? Scientific data exchange, perhaps? Cultural information sharing?" Rex terminated the communication with a savage swipe of his clawed hand. Never in his career had he encountered such baffling behavior. A Deathworld species that claimed to prefer peace over war, cooperation over conquest, and sustainability over expansion. It was clearly impossible. His strategic advisor, an ancient Vorthak named Krell, spoke with the measured tones of his species. "Commander, their behavior suggests either elaborate deception or genuine belief in their stated position. Our intelligence indicates their world has indeed experienced extensive warfare, but they appear to have developed beyond it." "Impossible," Rex snarled. "Deathworld species don't develop beyond violence. Violence is what makes them strong. These humans are either lying or weak. Either way, they will join the Alliance." Rex activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships assume attack formation. We will demonstrate to these humans why the Deathworld Alliance is not to be refused. Once they witness our power, they will understand the futility of resistance." The massive Draknari vessels began moving into position, their weapon systems charging with energy that could crack continents. Rex felt the familiar thrill of impending victory. Soon, Earth would provide another warrior race to strengthen the Alliance, and these strange humans would learn that in the galaxy of the strong, peaceful intentions were merely weaknesses to be exploited. What Rex didn't know was that Earth had been monitoring their approach for weeks. Hidden sensors had analyzed their technology, their tactics, and their intentions. The peaceful research vessel had already transmitted detailed intelligence to Earth's defense network, and preparations were already underway for humanity's response. The Deathworld Alliance was about to learn that Earth's greatest strength wasn't its capacity for violence, but its ability to choose when and how to use that violence. They had evolved beyond mindless aggression into something far more dangerous, a species that could wage war with purpose, strategy, and restraint. Rex's fleet moved toward Earth, confident in their superiority and completely unaware that they were about to encounter something unprecedented in galactic history. A Deathworld species that had learned not just how to fight, but when fighting was necessary. The silence in Earth's orbital defense center felt heavier than the vacuum of space itself. Admiral Kate Rodriguez watched the massive alien fleet position itself beyond Mars' orbit, their weapons glowing with barely contained energy, every screen. In the command center displayed the same grim reality. Humanity faced its first interstellar war. "Status report," Kate said, her voice cutting through the tense atmosphere. 47 alien vessels, ranging from cruiser to dreadnought class, reported Lieutenant Commander David Kim from his station. "They're maintaining formation exactly as our intelligence predicted. Classic intimidation deployment." Maya's earlier transmission had given Earth's defense forces precious hours to prepare. The aliens clearly expected humanity to collapse under the weight of their superior technology and overwhelming firepower. They had positioned themselves to maximize visual impact while minimizing tactical effectiveness. It was the behavior of predators who had never encountered genuine resistance. "Admiral," called out Dr. Thompson from the science station, "we're receiving another transmission from the alien commander." Kate nodded grimly. Rex's face appeared on the main screen, his reptilian features twisted with what humans might recognize as impatience. His translated words carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Humans of Earth, you have witnessed the might of the Deathworld Alliance. We offer you one final opportunity to join our ranks willingly. Surrender now, and your integration into our forces will be swift. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why resistance is futile. Kate stepped forward, her uniform bearing the insignia of Earth's combined military forces. Commander Rex, I am Admiral Kate Rodriguez of the Earth Defense Force. We've considered your offer carefully, and our answer remains the same. Earth will not join your alliance. Rex's laugh was a sound like grinding stone. Then you have chosen destruction. Your primitive vessels cannot match the combined might of 47 Deathworlds. This will be over quickly. The transmission ended, and Kate turned to face her officers. Every person in the command center understood the magnitude of what they faced. The aliens possessed superior technology, larger ships, and centuries of military experience. By every logical measure, Earth should have surrendered. All ships, this is Admiral Rodriguez, Kate announced across the fleet communications network. Remember, we're not here to prove we're the strongest. We're here to protect our home. Every one of you has trained for this moment. Trust your training. Trust your crews and trust each other. The first phase of the battle began exactly as Earth's strategists had predicted. The alien fleet advanced in perfect formation, their massive ships moving with the confidence of apex predators. They had clearly fought this type of engagement countless times before, following tactics that had proven successful against dozens of other species. What they encountered instead was something unprecedented in their experience. Human ships didn't meet them in formation. Instead, they appeared from seemingly empty space, having used Earth's mastery of stealth technology to position themselves throughout the battle area. Small, fast vessels emerged from behind asteroids, from within gas clouds, and from the shadows of planets. Rex's tactical display suddenly showed not the handful of ships he had expected, but thousands of human vessels. Most were smaller than Alliance standards, but they moved with a coordination that defied military logic. They didn't maintain rigid formations or follow predictable patterns. Instead, they flowed like a living organism, adapting to threats in real time. The first exchange of fire revealed the depth of the Alliance's miscalculation. Human weapons weren't necessarily more powerful than Alliance systems, but they were used with surgical precision. While Alliance ships fired massive volleys designed to overwhelm enemy defenses, human vessels targeted specific systems with concentrated bursts. David Kim's cruiser, the EDF Defiant, demonstrated humanity's tactical philosophy in action. Rather than engaging the largest enemy ship directly, he coordinated with 12 other vessels to systematically disable its weapon systems, sensor arrays, and propulsion. The massive dreadnought found itself helpless while smaller human ships continued their attack. Their targeting systems are incredible, Rex's weapons officer reported, his voice carrying the first hint of concern. They're hitting components we didn't even know were vulnerable, Rex snarled his frustration. Impossible. No species fights like this. Where are their battle lines? Where is their command structure? The answer came in the form of humanity's greatest tactical advantage: adaptability. When Rex's fleet managed to destroy the EDF resilience, Kate's flagship, the entire human fleet, seamlessly reorganized under Maya's research vessel. The transition took less than 30 seconds, and the battle continued without pause. They have no central command, Krell observed, his analytical mind struggling to process what he was witnessing. Each ship appears capable of independent operation while maintaining fleet coordination. It's as if they're fighting as individuals and as a collective simultaneously. The battle raged for hours, but the outcome became clear as Alliance ships began to suffer catastrophic losses. Human vessels used tactics that would have been considered suicide by Alliance standards. They sacrificed damaged ships to protect their crews, ramming disabled vessels into enemy formations while evacuating personnel in the final moments. Rex watched in horror as David Kim's cruiser, its engines failing and hull breached, accelerated directly toward a Drachnary battleship. The human crew abandoned ship in escape pods while their automated systems continued the attack. The collision destroyed both vessels, but the human crew survived while the Alliance lost 200 experienced warriors. "This is madness," Rex growled. "They value their equipment less than their people. How can they sustain such losses?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Human manufacturing facilities throughout the solar system had been producing replacement vessels throughout the battle. Earth's industrial capacity, developed through centuries of technological advancement, could replace ships faster than the Alliance could destroy them. More disturbing still was humanity's apparent ability to learn from each engagement. Ships that survived encounters with Alliance weapons adapted their tactics, sharing information across the fleet network. By the battle's end, human vessels were avoiding attacks that had been successful hours earlier. The final phase of the battle demonstrated humanity's most unsettling characteristic: restraint. As Alliance ships began to retreat, human forces didn't pursue for total annihilation. Instead, they offered surrender terms, medical assistance, and even prisoner exchanges. Rex's own ship, the Draknari flagship Blood of Conquerors, found itself surrounded by human vessels. Instead of destroying it, they demanded only his surrender and the withdrawal of all Alliance forces from Earth's system. "You fought well," Kate's voice came across the communication channel. "But this doesn't have to end with unnecessary death. Withdraw your forces, and we'll provide medical aid for your wounded." Rex stared at the tactical display in stunned silence. His fleet had been decisively defeated by a species that claimed to prefer peace over war. They had demonstrated military capabilities that exceeded Alliance standards while simultaneously showing mercy to their enemies. "This is impossible," Rex muttered. "Deathworld species don't show mercy. They conquer or they die." Krell's response carried the weight of terrible understanding. "Commander, I don't think these humans are like other Deathworld species. They've evolved beyond simple aggression into something far more dangerous, a species that can choose when and how to use violence." The Draknari fleet limped away from Earth's system, carrying wounded warriors and shattered assumptions. For the first time in Alliance history, they had encountered a species that possessed not just the ability to wage war, but the wisdom to know when war was necessary. Rex's final transmission to Alliance command carried a warning that would change the course of galactic history. Earth is not just another death world. It's something else entirely. Something we may not be able to defeat. The interrogation chamber aboard the Alliance space station felt colder than the void between stars. Professor Elena Kowalski sat across from Commander Thane, her hands folded calmly despite the circumstances. The Vorthek officer studied her, with compound eyes that had analyzed countless enemy strategies, but nothing had prepared him for what he was learning about humanity. "Your species makes no sense," Thane said, his translated voice carrying the frustration of someone whose entire worldview was crumbling. "Every death world produces warriors. Every intelligent species follows the same pattern: survive, adapt, conquer. But you claim to have moved beyond conquest." Elena smiled with the patience of someone who had spent decades teaching reluctant students. "Commander, I think you're operating under some fundamental misunderstandings about human development. We didn't move beyond conquest because we became weak. We moved beyond it because we became strong enough to choose better options." The prisoner exchange had been humanity's idea, another baffling decision that defied Alliance logic. They had captured Elena during a reconnaissance mission, expecting to extract typical military intelligence. Instead, they found themselves learning about human history from someone who seemed genuinely eager to share her knowledge. "Explain these better options," Then demanded. "Your planet's resources are limited. Your population exceeds 8 billion. Logic dictates that expansion through conquest is the only sustainable path." Elena leaned forward, her eyes bright with the enthusiasm of a teacher who had found an interested student. "That's exactly what we used to think. For thousands of years, humans believed that competition and conflict were the only ways to survive. We fought wars over territory, resources, ideology, and sometimes just because we could." Thane's tactical implants recorded every word, but his personal curiosity drove him to ask deeper questions. And this changed? How does a species evolve beyond its fundamental nature? We learned that cooperation could achieve more than competition, Elena replied. Not immediately, and not without mistakes. We had to nearly destroy ourselves first. The historical data Elena shared painted a picture that disturbed every Alliance strategist who reviewed it. Earth's 20th century had been marked by conflicts that dwarfed anything in Alliance records. 2 global wars that had consumed entire continents, weapons capable of destroying all life on the planet, and industrial killing on scales that even Deathworld species found shocking. Your World War II involved over 100 million casualties, Thane read from his datapad. This single conflict exceeded the total losses from our last 3 galactic campaigns combined. How does a species survive such devastation? Elena's expression grew somber. We almost didn't. But surviving that level of destruction taught us something important. We were more dangerous to ourselves than any external threat could ever be. We had to choose between learning to cooperate or facing extinction. The Alliance Intelligence Division had been studying human development for months, and every discovery defied their understanding of evolutionary logic. Humans had developed weapons capable of ending their own species, then shown the collective wisdom to step back from using them. They had created international organizations to prevent future conflicts, established rules for warfare, and built global networks for cooperation. This is impossible, Thane muttered, reviewing the data for the 100th time. Species don't voluntarily limit their own power. Warriors don't choose peace when they could choose victory. Elena chuckled, a sound that somehow managed to be both warm and terrifying. Commander, you're still thinking like a warrior species. Humans learn something that might surprise you. Peace isn't the absence of strength. It's the presence of enough strength to choose not to fight when fighting isn't necessary. The interrogation sessions continued for weeks, but they had long since ceased to be interrogations. Thane found himself in the unprecedented position of learning from his prisoner, and what he learned challenged everything the Alliance believed about strength, survival, and success. Your species adapted to every environment on your planet, Thane observed. Deserts, frozen wastelands, tropical jungles, mountain peaks. This adaptability is impressive, but it doesn't explain your technological advancement. Elena's response revealed the true scope of humanity's uniqueness. We didn't just adapt to our environment, Commander. We learned to adapt to each other. Every human culture developed different solutions to the same basic problems. When we finally started sharing those solutions instead of fighting over them, our technological progress accelerated exponentially. The Alliance had never encountered a species that had mastered cooperative competition. Human nations still competed with each other, but they did so through innovation, exploration, and achievement rather than conquest. They had turned their competitive instincts into engines of progress rather than destruction. Your space program involved multiple nations working together, Thane noted, his confusion evident. They shared resources, technology, and personnel. Why would competing powers choose cooperation over domination? Because we learned that exploring the universe was bigger than any single nation's ambitions, Elena explained. When you're facing the infinite challenges of space, cooperation stops being optional and starts being essential. The most disturbing aspect of human development was their apparent ability to learn from any source. Alliance intelligence had discovered that humans were already studying captured Alliance technology, but instead of simply copying it, they were improving upon designs that had remained unchanged for millennia. Your engineers modified our plasma conduits to increase efficiency by 12%, Thane said, his voice carrying a mixture of admiration and concern. How is such rapid advancement possible? Elena grinned with obvious pride. We have a saying on Earth, good artists copy, great artists steal. We've been borrowing ideas from each other for millennia. We've gotten very good at taking existing concepts and making them better. The Alliance Review Board that studied Elena's testimony reached a unanimous conclusion. Humanity represented something unprecedented in galactic history. They possessed the technological capability of an advanced species, the adaptability of a successful survivor species and the wisdom of a mature civilization. The combination was both fascinating and terrifying. They're not just another Deathworld species, Thane reported to the Alliance Council. They're what a Deathworld species becomes when it survives long enough to evolve beyond mere survival. They've maintained their strength while developing restraint, kept their competitive nature, while learning cooperation. The Council's response was immediate and decisive. Humanity must be destroyed before they could spread their influence to other species. The concept of voluntary cooperation threatened the very foundation of Alliance power, which depended on the assumption that only strength could maintain order. But even as the Alliance prepared for total war, they faced a troubling question. If humans could learn from any source, what would they learn from fighting a galactic coalition of warrior species? The answer to that question would determine not just the fate of Earth, but the future of the galaxy itself. Elena's final words to Thane carried a warning that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Commander, you're about to teach humanity how to fight a galactic war. I hope you've considered what they might do with that knowledge. The mining colony on Altair 7 had never seen anything like the strange ship that appeared in their asteroid field. Unlike the massive, threatening vessels of the Alliance, this human craft seemed almost delicate, its hull gleaming with an opalescent finish that reflected the light of distant stars. Captain Tom Bradley studied the readings from his scanner as he approached the enslaved world. Peaceful intentions, he muttered to himself, reviewing the diplomatic protocols that had been hammered out in Earth's hastily convened war council. We're liberators, not conquerors, remember that. The Altarian population had been strip mining their own world for the Alliance for over 3 centuries. Their once beautiful planet had been reduced to a scarred wasteland, its resources flowing to feed the Alliance war machine. The native inhabitants, a gentle species with translucent skin and large, sorrowful eyes, had long ago given up any hope of freedom. Tom's communication officer, Lieutenant Sarah Chun, established contact with the colony's leadership. The response came in the form of terrified pleading from Elder Vash, the colony's appointed administrator. Unknown vessel, please identify yourself and state your business. We are under Alliance protection and have nothing of value to offer raiders. Tom took a deep breath before responding. Elder Vash, I am Captain Tom Bradley of the Earth Defense Force. We're not here to raid or conquer. We're here to offer you something the Alliance never has, a choice. The silence that followed stretched across light seconds of space. When Vash finally responded, his voice carried the weight of centuries of oppression. Choice, I do not understand. This word in the context you use it. We're offering you freedom, Tom explained patiently. The Alliance has enslaved your people, but it doesn't have to be that way. We can help you fight back, help you reclaim your world. The response revealed the depth of Alliance psychological control. Vash's people had been conditioned to believe that resistance was impossible, that their only hope for survival lay in absolute obedience to their masters. The concept of voluntary cooperation, of choosing one's own path, was as foreign to them as breathing underwater. Freedom is not possible, Vash said, his translated words heavy with despair. The Alliance is too strong. We are too weak. This is the natural order. Tom's tactical officer, Commander Lisa Park, leaned over to whisper urgently. Captain, we're detecting Alliance patrol ships approaching from the outer system. We have maybe 6 hours before they arrive. Tom nodded grimly. 6 hours to convince an entire species that freedom was possible, then help them achieve it. It was exactly the kind of impossible mission that humanity had been preparing for since the war began. Elder Vash, I'm going to show you something, Tom said, transmitting technical specifications that made the Altarian's eyes widen in amazement. These are mining charges, but not for extracting resources. They're for destroying Alliance installations. We can teach you how to make them from your own mining equipment. The human approach to liberation was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of conquering Alliance territories and claiming them for Earth, humanity offered technology, knowledge, and most importantly, The radical concept that every species had the right to determine its own fate, within hours. Tom's team had established a hidden base in the asteroid field, using Altarian knowledge of their system's geology combined with human stealth technology. The gentle miners, who had never conceived of violence as a tool of liberation, found themselves learning to fight back against their oppressors. "The key is to make them think you're still compliant," Tom explained to a group of Altarian resistance leaders. "Continue your mining operations, but use the tunnels you dig to plant explosives in Alliance installations. When they come to investigate production delays, they'll find empty mines and destroyed equipment." The strategy worked with devastating effectiveness. The Alliance had ruled through fear and overwhelming force, but they had never prepared for guerrilla warfare conducted by species they considered harmless. The Altarians' intimate knowledge of their world's underground networks, combined with human tactical expertise, turned the mining colony into an impregnable fortress. General Patricia Woods, commanding the Free Worlds Coalition from her mobile headquarters, watched the rebellion spread across dozens of star systems. Each liberated world became a base for further operations, each successful resistance inspiring others to question their Alliance overlords. "Status report," Patricia requested during her daily briefing with Liberation Fleet commanders. 17. "Systems have declared independence from the Alliance," reported Captain Bradley via quantum communication. "The Altarians have completely shut down resource extraction on their world. The Valkyrie have seized 3 Alliance supply depots. The Zephyrians have begun broadcasting freedom messages to neighboring systems." Patricia studied the holographic display showing the expanding sphere of rebellion. Each system that joined the coalition brought new capabilities, new knowledge, and new hope to the resistance movement. But more importantly, each victory demonstrated that the Alliance's power was not as absolute as it appeared. "What's the Alliance?" "Response?" Patricia asked. Tom's voice carried grim satisfaction. "They're executing populations that show signs of human influence, but it's backfiring. Every massacre just proves to other species that the Alliance rules through fear, not strength." The human approach to warfare was proving devastatingly effective precisely because it wasn't about warfare at all. They fought not to conquer territory or claim resources, but to spread ideas. The concept of voluntary cooperation, of choosing one's own path, was more infectious than any biological weapon on worlds throughout Alliance space. Species that had been enslaved for millennia began to remember what freedom felt like. The Altarians shared their underground networks with human advisors. The Valkyrie contributed their advanced sensor technology to the Coalition fleet. The Zephyrians used their natural telepathic abilities to coordinate resistance operations. Across light years of space, "We're not building an empire," Patricia explained to her officers during a strategy session. "We're building a network. Each species contributes what they can, and everyone benefits from the collective strength." The Alliance found themselves fighting an enemy that grew stronger with each battle. Human forces didn't just adapt to their tactics, they absorbed the best aspects of every species they encountered. They combined Altarian patience with Valkyrie precision and Zephyrian coordination, creating a hybrid fighting force that defied every principle of military science. Most disturbing of all, from the Alliance perspective, was humanity's treatment of prisoners. They offered medical aid, prisoner exchanges, and even asylum to Alliance soldiers who chose to defect. This compassion, which the Alliance viewed as weakness, proved to be humanity's greatest weapon as more species began to question their loyalty to the warrior coalition. "They're not trying to defeat us," Thane observed during an Alliance strategy meeting. "They're trying to convert us." Every engagement becomes an opportunity to demonstrate that their way of life is superior to ours. The realization was terrifying. The Alliance had built their power on the assumption that strength was the only currency that mattered in the galaxy. But humanity had introduced something more valuable, the possibility that cooperation could achieve more than conquest ever could. As the rebellion spread, the Alliance leadership faced an unprecedented crisis. They were losing not just battles, but the ideological foundation of their entire civilization. For the first time in galactic history, warrior species were beginning to question whether warfare was the only path to survival. The war had become something far more dangerous than a military conflict. It had become a battle for the future of galactic civilization, and humanity was winning not through superior firepower, but through the radical idea that every species deserved the right to choose its own destiny. The research facility buried beneath Earth's Antarctic ice sheet hummed with activity as Dr. Maya Thompson studied the most important discovery in human history. The ancient artifact, recovered from the ruins of a destroyed Alliance world, pulsed with energy patterns that defied every known law of physics. Around her, scientists from 17 different species worked together to unlock its secrets. The quantum resonance patterns are consistent across all samples, reported Dr. Viaran, an Altarian physicist whose translucent skin glowed with excitement. Whatever civilization created these artifacts, they had mastery over space-time itself. Maya nodded, her attention focused on the holographic display showing the galaxy's star map. Red dots marked worlds where similar artifacts had been found, creating a pattern that suggested deliberate placement rather than random distribution. Each discovery had brought them closer to understanding the truth about galactic civilization. "The dating is confirmed," announced Dr. Kef, a Valkyrie archaeologist whose 4 arms work simultaneously at different control stations. All artifacts are approximately 50,000 years old. They predate every known civilization by millennia. The implications were staggering. The artifacts weren't just ancient technology. They were evidence of a galaxy-spanning civilization that had vanished before any current species had achieved sentience. But more importantly, they contained genetic databases that revealed the true origin of every Deathworld species. "Show me the genetic comparison again," Maya requested, her voice tight with anticipation. The holographic display shifted to show DNA sequences from dozens of species. The patterns were unmistakable. Every Deathworld species shared common genetic markers, artificial modifications that had been introduced at some point in their evolutionary history. All except one. "Earth's genetic baseline is completely natural," Dr. Viaran observed. "No artificial modifications, no engineered enhancements. Humans are the only species that evolved without outside interference." Maya felt the weight of discovery settling on her shoulders. The revelation explained everything: why humanity was different, why they had developed capabilities that other species lacked, why they alone had achieved the balance between strength and wisdom that had eluded every other Deathworld species. "We need to call a general assembly," Maya said quietly. "Every species in the coalition needs to hear this." The communications array in the facility's main chamber crackled to life as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for the most important meeting in galactic history. Alliance leaders, coalition members, and neutral species all connected to hear what Earth scientists had discovered. Rex appeared on the main screen, his reptilian features showing the strain of leading a crumbling empire. Beside him, Fane's compound eyes reflected the confusion of someone whose entire worldview had been shattered. The Alliance had been losing the war not through military defeat, but through mass defection as more species chose cooperation over conquest. "The evidence is conclusive," Maya announced, her words carrying across light years of space. The galaxy was once inhabited by a species of incredible technological capability. They conducted a massive experiment, genetically modifying the evolution of species on thousands of worlds. The assembled representatives listened in stunned silence as Maya explained the discovery. Each Deathworld had been designed to produce specific traits: the Drachnari for aggression, the Vorthak for strategic thinking, the Altarians for patience and endurance. Every species had been artificially enhanced to excel in particular areas. But Earth was different, Maya continued. Earth was the control group. Humanity was allowed to develop naturally, without any genetic modifications or evolutionary guidance. "We represent what natural evolution can achieve when left to its own devices." The implications rippled through the assembled delegates like a shockwave. The Alliance's entire philosophy had been based on the assumption that strength was the fundamental requirement for survival. But humanity's success proved that natural evolution could produce something more valuable than specialized strength: adaptability. This means our entire civilization has been built on a lie, Thane said, his voice carrying the weight of terrible understanding. We were created to be warriors, but we were never meant to be complete beings. Rex's response was immediate and furious. Impossible. The strong survive and the weak perish. That is the natural order. No, Maya replied gently. That's the artificial order. You were programmed to believe that strength was the only path to survival, but humanity proves that cooperation, adaptability, and wisdom are equally valid evolutionary strategies. The revelation shattered the Alliance's ideological foundation. Species that had spent millennia believing in their inherent superiority discovered that their advantages were artificial enhancements rather than natural evolution. More disturbing still, those enhancements had come at the cost of other capabilities that humanity had developed naturally. The ancient civilization didn't just modify our genetics, Dr. Kef added. They modified our psychology. Each species was programmed with specific behavioral patterns that would prevent them from achieving balance. Only humans developed the full spectrum of capabilities. The data was overwhelming. Humans possessed elements of every enhanced species, strengths while maintaining the flexibility to adapt and grow beyond their original limitations. They had Drachnary aggression when needed, but could choose restraint. They had Vorthok strategic thinking, but combined it with creativity. They had Altarian patience, but knew when swift action was required. We were all part of an experiment, Elder Vash said, his voice filled with wonder rather than anger. But the experimenters are gone, and we are free to choose our own path. The Alliance Council chamber fell silent as the full implications became clear. Rex stared at the data streams, watching centuries of certainty crumble into dust. His species had been programmed for aggression, conditioned to see conquest as the only path to survival. But humans had proven that there were other ways to thrive. What happened to them? Rex asked finally. The ones who created us? Maya's expression grew thoughtful as she studied the final piece of the puzzle. The artifacts contain one last message. They're returning. The holographic display shifted to show deep space sensor readings from the galaxy's edge. Something massive was approaching, traveling at speeds that defied current understanding of physics. The ancient civilization that had seeded the galaxy. With life was coming back to check on their experiment. They expected to find a galaxy of specialized species, each perfected for specific functions, Maya explained. Instead, they're going to find something they never planned for, a species that developed beyond their limitations. The war that had consumed the galaxy suddenly seemed insignificant compared to this revelation. The Alliance and the Coalition faced a choice that would determine the future of every living being in the galaxy. They could continue fighting each other, weakened and divided when the ancients returned. Or they could unite under humanity's leadership to face whatever was coming. Thane was the first to speak. The Vorthok withdraw from the Alliance. We choose to learn from humanity rather than fight them. One by one, other species followed. The Altarians had already joined the coalition. The Velkari chose neutrality but offered to share their technology. Even some Drachnary factions began to question Rex's leadership as they realized their aggression was programmed rather than natural. This is madness, Rex snarled, but his words lacked their usual conviction. We are warriors. We conquer or we die. No, Maya said, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had unlocked the galaxy's greatest secret. You are whatever you choose to be. The programming can be overcome. Humanity is proof that growth is possible. The Alliance began to fracture as species chose their own paths rather than following the artificial imperatives that had been programmed into their genetics. Some, like Rex's faction of Drachnary, chose to maintain their warrior traditions. Others, inspired by humanity's example, began to explore new possibilities. But the greatest change came from within the species themselves. Drachnary discovered that they could channel their aggression into exploration and discovery. Vorthak found that their strategic minds could be used for cooperation rather than conquest. Altarians learned that their patience could be combined with determination to achieve impossible goals. The ancients gave us specialized tools, Dr. Varen observed. But humans showed us that we could use those tools for purposes beyond their original design. The transformation of galactic civilization happened with startling speed. Species that had been enemies for millennia began working together, sharing knowledge and resources. The coalition expanded not through conquest but through voluntary association, as more civilizations chose cooperation over conflict. "We're building something the ancients never imagined," General Woods reported from her new headquarters on Liberated. Altair 7. A truly free galactic civilization where every species contributes according to their abilities and receives according to their needs. Maya stood in the observation deck of Earth's newest space station, watching ships from dozens of species working together to prepare for the ancients' return. Human vessels worked alongside Altarian miners, Valkyrie scientists, and even reformed Draknari explorers. It was a sight that would have been impossible just months earlier. Status report on the approaching signals? Maya asked her communications. Officer, still 6 months out, but we're getting clearer readings. It's definitely artificial, and it's massive. Preliminary estimates suggest something larger than our moon. Maya nodded thoughtfully. The ancients were returning to a galaxy they wouldn't recognize. Instead of finding a collection of specialized servant species, they would encounter something unprecedented. A civilization that had transcended its programming to achieve true freedom. "Send a message to all coalition worlds," Maya commanded. "Tell them we're ready. Whatever the ancients expect to find, they're going to discover that their greatest experiment succeeded in ways they never anticipated." The message that went out across the galaxy carried humanity's greatest gift to the stars: hope. Not the desperate hope of species fighting for survival, but the confident hope of beings who had chosen their own destiny. The Deathworld Alliance had discovered what Earth was truly capable of, and it was more than they had ever imagined. As the ancient ships approached through the void, they would find a galaxy united not by force or programming, but by the radical idea that every species deserved the right to choose its own path. Humanity had shown the way, but the future belonged to everyone willing to embrace the possibility of growth beyond their limitations. The greatest test was still ahead, but for the first time in galactic history, the civilized species would face it together as equals rather than as programmed servants. The experiment was ending, but the real adventure was just beginning.